Final Fantasy XII, the black sheep of the long-reigning JRPG series. A story with heavy political intrigue and a unique auto-playing system, Final Fantasy XII secured itself a little cult. However, for me, it was one of the most boring adventures I've been through, and a disappointing Final Fantasy. To be honest, I only took interest in this game because I was told a certain character oozed sex appeal. This was part of a jokey conversation to see if I would find this character more attractive than Seymour from Final Fantasy X. Spoiler alert, I don't. The point is, I wanted to see it for myself, otherwise I would have never picked up this game. Needless to say, this game was definitely not my speed. A parade celebrating a marriage between two kingdoms, strengthening their bonds when Arcadia attacks. Princess Alicia of Dalmasca and Prince Rassler of Nabudis' happiness is short-lived, as Rassler returns home to defend his country from the Arcadian Empire, and loses his life in the process. The King of Dalmasca decides to meet with Arcadia, and talk of treaties when word gets out it's a ploy for assassination. Bosch, a seasoned soldier, and Rex, a young man with a desire to protect his homeland, along with a few others, set out to save the king. And as fate would have it, they were too late. Not only was the king slain, but Bosch betrayed Rex and the kingdom of Dalmasca. It's said the princess took her own life, and now Dalmasca is under Arcadian rule. Now meet Vaan, a kid who wants to be a sky pirate and hates the Imperials. Also, the main character, who has nothing to do with anything aside from being the younger brother of Rex. He wants to stick it to the Imperials and infiltrates the royal palace where Vayne, the lead antagonist, now resides. This leads Vaan meeting two sky pirates, Fran, the sexy bunny babe, and the leading man, Balthier, who were on the hunt for something. Later, this leads to them meeting the princess, who still draws breath. Throw in Vaan's childhood friend, Penelo, also has no narrative purpose, and the Kingslayer himself, Bosch. Then you got the whole flabby party, working together to harness the power of Nethicite, this world's super powerful MacGuffin, and take back their home, or use its power to utterly annihilate the Empire. So a few things might have impacted the final quality of the game for me. One, Final Fantasy XII had a hell of a development cycle. The team was originally led by two directors, Final Fantasy Tactics' Yasumi Matsuno, and Final Fantasy IX's Hiroyuki Ito. Though I've yet to play his other games, from what I've researched, Matsuno's no stranger to the tumultuous landscape of politics. Having directed several other JRPGs that set the art and struggle of statecraft as its centerpiece of their stories, Final Fantasy XII was nothing outside of his comfort zone. Sadly, Matsuno had to leave a year before release, due to health concerns, and the story suffered a tremendous loss for it. As a result, the team was reorganized. The new group was Ito and Hayashi Minagawa, and Akitoshi Kawazo of the Saga series was executive producer. I am a super character-driven person. I remember seeing the official art of these characters and thought to myself, wow, none of these people look interesting, save for maybe Fran, and they weren't. 2 slots, one of them being the main character slot, Vaan, was wasted. Apparently Square had to meet their pretty boy quota. Same with Penelo. As the childhood friend, they needed some youth to their otherwise mature cast. And what kills me is they could have had an amazing child character, and his name is Larsa. He was in a unique position that would have lent an interesting perspective. He was witty, kind, intelligent, and a child wise beyond his years. Then we have Ashe, the actual main character, who is fine. I admire her conviction in wanting to secure her kingdom's freedom, but other than that, she was really plain. Balthier, the characters whose sex appeal is in question, and easily the most charismatic of the bunch. It's his damn British accent, I swear. He's so suave and has a silver tongue. And yes, I concede he oozes sex appeal. He's always fun to listen to and has a connection to the story, but doesn't amount to much later. His past is mentioned and then that was that. Fran, let's be honest, and I say this with all due respect, if Balthier is Han Solo, Fran is sexy Chewbacca. She has one segment, then it's over. And lastly, Bosch, who should have been the main character, was even originally written as the main character. He had an awesome setup that didn't carry the weight of his perceived crimes. He was the character I wanted to see overcome his struggles the most, and the payoff was not there. This was a constant slap in the face with characters. Everyone looked and sounded more important than they actually were. I could not give any less of a damn about these characters, even the main villain. I was so disappointed in. Villains are best when you feel their overbearing and sinister presence. and I felt nothing. And I really thought because I was a Game of Thrones fan, I would enjoy the political intrigue. I can handle flowery language. Nah man, I struggled with paying attention, which I'm certain hurt me in the long run. To get the most out of this story, understanding subtext is a must. That's why immediately afterward I watched a Final Fantasy XII recap video to make sure I understood the material, and frankly needed a refresher because barely anything stuck with me. We had a weak cast, so weak the main antagonist doesn't even know them until the end. Judges, the Imperial generals, were underutilized. It was a lot of go here and get this, now go here, collect that. Spliced in were Imperials doing Imperial shit. All I knew throughout this entire adventure is I would rather be sleeping. But there is a light at the end of this snooze fest of the story in inadequate characters. The combat. The one thing I genuinely enjoyed. Final Fantasy XII, the Zodiac Age, had a myriad of changes from the original, and to most, it made the game actually playable. The Gambit system. Unlike most games where you choose your action each turn, this plays similar to an auto-battler, but with more precision. Gambits are required to trigger an action. Set your characters up with multiple gambits, like attack the foe closest to you, or that your leader is targeting, or if an ally's HP is less than X amount, use Cure. You can also order gambits to give them priority, so healing spells or items should probably go near the top. There are gambits for everything, so when you want to buff, debuff, target enemy weaknesses, use techniques based on how many enemies are present. I was so impressed with how detailed this system was. Another addition is you're able to control guests and espers. Before the remastered Zodiac Age, it was all AI, but now you can control them and set their gambits. After the gambits have been set, you merely watch them play out. Now the tricky thing here is, if you set your gambits incorrectly, you can screw yourself over, attacking allies, wasting items, or precious MP. Limit breaks return in the form of quickenings. They don't require MP, but the orange bar at the bottom. Land several of these time-consuming skills in a row to do massive damage. I personally am a huge fan of the gambit system. I love meticulously crafting your gambits and seeing your dream machination play out. I like the twist of doing major setup beforehand and watching it play out. And it's not like you're completely disengaged, as you can manually set commands for you and your teammates. Secondly, the license board. In the original, there was one big board, making it hard to properly customize your character without getting skills unbeneficial to your dream job. In Zodiac Age, you can select jobs which have the skills and spells tailored to that class, allowing for a smoother build. And what's great, later in game, you're allowed to pick a second job board, allowing for a subclass. And fear not, no combination in FF12 is wrong, as Final Fantasy XII is a pretty easy game, made easier if you abuse the hell out of the gambit system. Of course, stumbling upon optional bosses will really test how much you understand the system, as you can stumble upon them anywhere. FF12 maps are huge, ginormous, and very interconnected, and that's upgrade number 2. You can go up to 4 times speed, and I'm grateful for that because I don't know how you PS2 Final Fantasy XII fans did it. We moving way too slow for such a large area. Also, I cannot believe there was no map overlay beforehand, so you're able to travel while watching where you're going. This is especially useful for hunts, aka side quests. Now, I fucking hate side quests in this game. I hate that most of the time they aren't marked on your mini-map. Hunts, you have to go to a different menu to go to your petitioner to get the quest, hunt the damn thing, then return to the petitioner. The actual hunt itself was cool, fighting tricky monsters and putting your knowledge of the gambit system to the test. Hunts also contribute to your rank. Joining a guild, rising the ranks, will get you special access to the guild shop, which has special items, spells, and equipment. As much as I hate them, I highly encourage you do them. Some of those green magic spells are a must. Oh, and they added a trial mode. Fight as many monsters as you can, and move to the next area. Pretty straightforward. And that's about all I like about Final Fantasy XII. Back to shit talking. Final Fantasy XII Zodiac Age has also had both visual and audio updates. Obviously, looking at it beside the PS2 original, they've done good work. But that doesn't mean my sourpuss ass liked it. I think this is such a drab world, despite the color palette of browns, grays, muddied colors, and above all else, I despise realism. I didn't have the type of high fantasy flair that I liked, and I don't know what to say. I've always been attracted to bright, loud, energetic colors. Almost everything felt muted. Even the CGI cutscenes struggled to keep my attention. I am genuinely surprised when people say this world is beautiful and interesting. I could not for the life of me get visually invested. Man, I'm grateful this game played itself, because that meant I could walk away and give my eyes a moment of rest. Even the character designs. I remember looking at the box art and thinking, wow, I don't care to learn about any of these characters. Not only was the story boring, the visuals stale, but the music was garbage. I remember one track and one track alone from this entire game. But before we get to that, this entire soundtrack sounded like that of a movie. It was the most generic desert music, plains, or cavern. I swear I'd hear this shit in the background of The Hobbit. I couldn't believe my ears that an entry of the Final Fantasy series had such a monotonous soundtrack, even though Zodiac Age offered both the original and orchestral versions. Lowtown is the underground of the great city of Remaster, and you visit rather early in the game. This gave me hope that maybe there were good songs to come, but alas, there wasn't. This was as good as it's gonna get. I like the very tropical yet skeevy sounding undertone. Final Fantasy XII really got me thinking about the downfall of Final Fantasy, where things really began to change and lose its identity. No more ATB, the stories and world didn't carry that classic Final Fantasy feeling of games like 4, 6, and 9. 10 is a unique case. It felt like the beginning of the end. What's heartbreaking about all this is, while playing Final Fantasy XII, I never felt like I was playing a Final Fantasy game, and that makes me a little sad. I haven't played most Final Fantasies, so I won't claim to be a know-it-all, but recent Final Fantasies, excluding 14, have been receiving bad or mixed responses, and it makes me nervous to move forward with the series, especially with 16 underway. This reaffirms my belief that I might be better off sticking to the golden age of Final Fantasy. My favorites being Final Fantasy IX and 4, which I've covered on this channel. I really recommend you check those out, especially if you're new to the series and want to experience what I believe to be the true spirit of Final Fantasy, headed by series creator Hironobu Sakaguchi. And always, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to join the Patreon, get into the Discord, early access to vids and postcards. Love your faces, and I'll see you in the next video. Mwah!